Whether you're picking and grinning or just picking or just grinning, grab a drink, pull up a seat. It's time for Roots Music Rambler. Turn it up.
ABC, easy as 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Better than do, re, mi.
All right, I'm going to keep the you singing part in the beginning of the show just for the shits and giggles. Hi, everybody. Hey, I got an update for everybody on Bill Taylor and the Appalachian Heatherns. Shortly after, is actually just a couple of days after our episode dropped with them a few weeks ago, Bill came on to the social media channels and unfortunately let everybody know that the band did not get selected for the round of live America's Got Talent tapings as the second round. There's apparently 100 contestants in the first round, and only 44 of the 100 get chosen for the live broadcast, so the next round of the competition. And Bill Taylor and the Appalachian Heatherns, much to our chagrin, did not get selected for the next round of the show. Still, though, an amazing opportunity for them. They got to audition on a television show that's seen by millions of people, and obviously their opportunities, they're opening for bigger acts now. They're actually headlining some shows. They've been invited to a bunch of festivals that they weren't on the radar for before that happened. They got to appear on Roots Music Rambler. I mean, shit's just going great for these guys.
For real. I mean, after you're on Roots Music Rambler, where do you go from there?
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of funny that you say that, because I was actually doing a quick review of, and by the way, the Bill Taylor and the Appalachian Heatherns was our 50th episode. We only do every 2 weeks, so that's a couple years worth of shows there.
Oh, yeah.
And so proud of that. But I was going back and looking at some of our guests, and we've actually got some news happening for some of our former guests now. Today, as we record this in the middle of August, Magnolia Boulevard and Maggie Noel, who we had on a few episodes ago, they just announced today that November 28th, their first full LP will be coming out. And so
can't wait.
She hinted around about it when she was on the show, but they officially announced the album will be out November 28th later this year, so super stoked about that. Bill Taylor and the Appalachian Heatherns, they're hoping to get a new album out by the end of the year, so they've got something coming, which is amazing. Rachel Brooke, who was on the show, actually has a new album out called, I think it's called Sing Sad Songs or something like that. It's very it's a collection of sad songs. But she's got a new album out. J.D. Shelburne, our first ever guest on Roots Music Rambler, just a few weeks ago made his Grand Ole Opry debut. So big things happening for some of our former guests. And then we'll go one step out. A gentleman by the name of Adam Chafin, who you may or may not know who that is, but he is actually the husband of Britt Taylor, who was on the show promoting her album Kentucky Blue. Adam Chafin's got a new solo album out. He's starting to do some shows on the road, and so proud of him. He actually plays bass in Britt's band, or at least did. I don't know how his solo career is going to change that dynamic, but Britt Taylor's husband, Adam, Morehead State graduate, go Eagles, he has a new solo album out. So lots of things happening for our former guests. We can't take credit for any of it, but we certainly can take credit for seeing talent and grabbing them and putting a mic in front of their face and asking them questions. And so, always good to follow along and subscribe here to Roots Music Rambler, because we're talking to some movers and shakers out there in the Americana music space, which is pretty damn cool.
And may I add another one?
Absolutely.
Nathan Graham has a new album in the works.
Yes.
So that should be coming soon.
Well, that's great, because I love his last album, and and Nathan was, I think, episode 3 or something like that. He was early.
It was early on, yeah.
Great to see him back in the studio. So excited for all those folks. Welcome to Roots Music Rambler. She's Frank.
And he's Falls.
And we're rambling on through the stories behind the music we love.
Yeah, and today on the show, we're going to dive into something a little bit different. We've got record producer and studio engineer Ann Gauthier with us from LaLaLand Sound in Louisville, Kentucky. She spends most of her time producing, mixing, and recording with artists like Bonnie Prince Billy, Murder by Death, Joan Shelley, and more. She has also contributed to records by Ray Lamontagne, Jake Shears, and White Reaper. She has also collaborated or worked with legendary producer Glyn Johns, who produced Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and more. And has also collaborated with Jim James of My Morning Jacket fame, and we all know how I feel about Jim James.
And all of that is true, including how Francesca feels about Jim James. Ann's resume and experiences are really impressive. She's recorded, mixed, or produced more than 100 records in her career. And we thought it would be fun and informative to dig into the mind of a record producer this week. As Frank said, Ann is based where I am in Louisville, but she goes back and forth between here and her native Montreal, Canada, working with artists globally too.
And got into the business, as many do, by having her own band. And we'll definitely get to know more of her background and influences, but we'll also pick her brain on how to produce a record, what input goes into the decisions that bring a song to life sonically, and the balance between the producer and the band or artist and more.
And we'll also have our normal Pickin the Grinnin segment as well, so be sure to stick around to the end. I'm excited, so let's get to it. We'll step out for a quick break for a refill and to thank the fine sponsors that make this show happen. When we come back, we'll talk to the woman behind the glass at LaLaLand Sound. Ann Gauthier is up next. This is Roots Music Rambler. Welcome back to Roots Music Rambler. That song is Boy in a Band from friend of the show, Kate Justice, and it was produced by the amazingly talented Ann Gauthier, the primary producer, engineer, and overseer of music magic at LaLaLand Sound in Louisville, Kentucky. She's there by way of Montreal, Canada, where she's originally from, but she's also here with us on Roots Music Rambler this week. Hello, Ann. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, very excited. So let's start just by giving folks a little level set on LaLaLand Sound and where it fits in the bigger music industry puzzle. We know it's an independent studio. I know of a handful of artists you've worked with there, but for someone who doesn't know a thing about how records are made and where artists go to record, tell us where LaLaLand comes in the picture.
LaLaLand is actually a pretty big spaced studio for the times, for the now times. So we got definitely lots of space to work with. We love working with a lot of analog gear, but mix it with digital gear for the easiness of editing. And we're just talking about editing, all that good jazz. But yeah, we got a beautiful space here with loads of really fun gear. And so we really serve like the local Louisville community, and we do a bunch of regional and some national stuff as well. So it's really fun to work at here because we do get pretty much every style of music ever made. So that's a super fun place to be in terms of, the kind of range of projects that you'll get. But yeah, we do everything from tracking, mixing, mastering. We'll do podcasts too, even once in a while.
Ooh, okay.
When we have requests. So we do a bunch of like other audio related things as well.
Sweet. Maybe Roots Music Rambler will one day be good enough to come to LaLaLand and record that.
Oh, well, I'm sure you're good enough now.
So in the intro, Francesca and I rolled off a short list of artists you've worked with or produced there at LaLaLand in the intro, but give us a little flavor of the variety of artists and projects that have come through there that maybe are recognizable or perhaps ones that stand out as different or memorable to you. Who have you worked with there?
So I've definitely worked with a lot of, definitely in the rock world and the country and the bluegrass world, but the rock world is very wide range as well. So, I've done a bunch of records with like Murder by Death, and then last year I did a thing for Slint, like I remixed that first record. So already you're talking about rock, but very different styles of rock. I work with the local honeys as well a bunch, and sometimes I'll do, like, I just finished a single with like a I don't know, kind of like a really loud rock, but like 90s influence, but like Korn, like people would like Korn and all that world of metal rock. So they were really tight. It was actually super fun.
Nice.
So I mean, we'll do all kinds of stuff, but yeah, so that would be some of the recognizable artists that I've worked with. But yeah, definitely a very, very wide range of folks that come in here.
The local honeys will make me perk up. Those two gals, I think, went through the music program at Morehead State, and
they did. Yeah,
we love their. I've loved their albums. I've got a couple of them here, so I've probably got a couple of your produced tunes over there over my shoulder.
Yeah, they're awesome musicians, awesome singers, and like great humans who care about the right things. Which, to me as well, like having worked in this industry for this long, that makes a big difference to me as well in terms of enjoying working with people.
Now, you mentioned the band you were talking about a minute ago. You mentioned they were tight, and I know what that means just because I've been around the business for a while. But I bet there's a difference between a band that comes to the studio and has everything rehearsed, and they're really tight and really crisp, and they get in and they get out. They know what they want. There's probably a big difference between them and an artist or a band who comes in and they don't really even have songs written, and they're just kind of experimenting and using up a lot of studio time to figure it out.
Yeah.
What are the pros and cons of those two approaches?
And I think it would depend on the style too. Like if you're like a rock band, a lot of times it probably is better to be prepared and tight because we can just work on getting great tones, getting a great mix. Like the other end of what you're talking about, which would be the other extreme, would be like when I worked with Kate, she came in with her songs and we talked about like the intent of each song and where she was seeing them going. That's where you do a lot more experimentation and, instrumentation. You try some things. The middle ground, which I'm less of a fan of, if I have a rock band that comes in, they're not tight at all. They're not organized. They don't have tuners. And I can, I've become a really great editor, so I can make everyone sound pretty good and tight. But that like if you're coming in the studio in that kind of middle range, it is a little bit like you were wasting a little bit of money because you could just come in tight and I wouldn't have to edit as much and get your tone right and all that stuff. So I think the two extremes you talk about are both really fun, and it kind of depends what style band, what style artist, if you're solo, if you already have a band. But yeah, the middle range would be where I have to work a lot harder to make that band sound like a record, like make your song sound like a record.
Yeah, I would imagine that the latter, or I guess the latter of those two in my example, the ones that they're not tight, they come in and they're kind of experimenting. I would imagine that's probably reserved for the people who have a little bit more money to spend on studio time.
Yeah, I think nowadays that's pretty rare. Like I was an engineer on that band, White Reaper. They're from here.
Yeah.
They're second or third. So I think they had 30 days budget to make a record, which is super rare. I mean, we've worked with way bigger artists here that had like 8 days to track, So they actually did that. They did half the record where they had their songs and the other half where they wanted to get that kind of experience, of writing in the studio. But even that can get tricky because at some point it's like, well, how, who says how long you'll spend writing this song? And like, it could be a week and you're like, we have like 7 days left to do all this stuff, Yeah. But long are the days where like, you're Fleetwood Mac and you spend a whole year in the studio.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite records ever. But
oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated with the creative process, and I love watching the documentaries where bands are in the studio and they're fighting and they're having their therapists come in and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then you hear the album after it's all over, and you're like, okay, I know what went into that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think one of the sort of mass media things that has kind of brought attention to the art of record producing and mixing, at least into a broader understanding for folks, are the various documentaries and interviews around the book lately that Rick Rubin has garnered. He's become one of the more widely known people with the title of producer out there. He's also very different than you.
Right.
He's a lot.
Yes.
Because you're a lot more hands-on. He's different than
Right.
that and more in-studio folks. How would you describe your style of producing, and what are some of the approaches that you've seen work for others?
I think like, and that's the thing. I think production means very different things too. So I feel like Rick Rubin has good taste, and I think that's a lot of what he's like. I want to work with you because I think he's got good vision and good taste. But yeah, apparently he's just kind of chilling and giving the good vibes, which is also, I've been in sessions where there was a producer and they're all about making people feel good. So that's part of it, like making people feel good and comfortable and confident. And I think another part of production is, to me, it's like teamwork. It's giving the artist the space to like share what they want their songs to be, how they want them to be portrayed in like record mode. I'm not really into, and sometimes I'll see that happening maybe with younger like female songwriters where it's like they really don't have a say in those records or don't sound like them. And I think that as an artist, that also doesn't help you build a career,
Yeah, true.
So to me, it's like giving that artist the space to like share what the songs are about, like what their influences are about, and me taking all that in with some of my influences and some of ideas I have, and kind of do a big mishmash of that. So to the core, to me, that is I guess my style of production.
Yeah, I'm curious what the difference or what the percentage is of people who come in. Like you mentioned, you were talking to Kate and you sat down and you kind of went through what each song meant and where she wanted it to go. I wonder what percentage of people come in with an idea of what they want and a vision versus the ones who come in and say, man, I just got these songs. Can you just make them sound good? What do you want me to do?
Yeah. I say like, actually the extreme of someone coming in being like, this is what I like, this is exactly what I want, is probably 1 project a year to 2 projects a year. So you are producing even when you don't get a producing credit, because a lot of times people like just have the songs, and sometimes obviously you'll more heavily produce. So even with Kate, she was like, I feel like this. And at some point I'm like, what if we put banjo and mandolin? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. It's like all about like give and take and teamwork and stuff. But yeah, I'd say most people just have songs that they like, that they wanted. And it's your job as an engineer to understand where that's going. So I think like also, I think when I turned 25, I stopped being a music snob, and that really helped me kind of gather influences and listen to all kinds of music. And like, I remember in Montreal, like our library opened up and they had like, you could rent CDs and vinyls, and I really went crazy. I just like was like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know this. And I feel like now that gives me a reference. If someone comes in and like, they don't always have to be like, this is my, like, I'm gathering from where they're at, like kind of like sonic ideas that we can bring to the record. And that could be like, I've actually done like a couple of new age records a couple of years ago. So it's like all kinds of stuff that you'll bring in, nice. Or even that hard rock band that came in. It's like, I have reference of like, even like, oh, I think maybe they would like this kind of vocal effect, kind of like in the world of maybe some of the things they'd be listening to, and also bringing your influences from other styles that you like, which is also super fun to do.
Very cool. I would imagine, is this safe to say that younger artists are probably a little bit more malleable, whereas the ones who have been established and know their sound a little better have a little bit more insistence on what they want? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I've never actually really thought about it. I think maybe people older might have better words to explain what they want, but it's, I don't know if it's, I'll have to think on that one. Okay. I'm not sure actually. I don't know if it's always linked.
Well, I like stumping people, so that's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a sign of a good question.
You did it.
I love it. So this may or may not be a fair question to ask. It might be unfair, but who's a favorite artist you've ever worked with?
God, I don't know. I will say, like, I love working with like talented, kind, good values people. So sometimes even if like they're not the best musician ever, like I don't really care. To me, it's like the experience and sharing and creating together, like having that space be positive is really important to me. And I think our studio, just like our studio, like super vibey, is super like, it makes you feel like you're at home. And that was kind of the goal of this place. And I think there's something about that makes it that I really haven't worked with like a lot of jerks in my career, which is very lucky. I think there's something about this space that makes people feel good and comfortable. And so that's been, it's been very helpful for that. But I'd say generally that probably would be, I think there's like unique projects that I'll do that I think would be maybe what you're talking about. Like I mentioned, I remixed the First Lint record with the Ethan last year. So that was like, that's not something you have on your card. You're like, this is what I'd like to do in my career. And then that comes up, you're like, all right. And then like you spent 5 days doing that and was like, wow, this is so crazy. This is awesome. So it's like, to me, it's more like the surprises of like being in this career. Like a couple of years ago, I did a record with like Glyn Johns. It's like, that was not on my card,
Wow.
And then it was like, wow, like, I know that when, I'm super old, like those would be moments that would be like, oh, this was like a memorable moment.
Oh, sure. I mean, Glyn Johns of, Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones fame. That's the top of the heap there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And even like, it's like, sometimes like, I think I remember, I don't know which record that was. I was listening to a record a couple of years ago. I was like, man, this record sounds so good. And it was like God, what's their name? It's like a kind of folky band from the 70s. And then I look it up. I was like, oh, Glenn recorded that. And so I emailed. I was like, oh, I love this record. Who knew that you also did that? Because, he's been working for like 50, 60 years. So obviously. Yeah, he's been... But yeah, to me, that would be like moments like that, very special moments of like memorable projects,
Very cool. Well, let's take a second to listen to more of Ann's work and take a quick break. When we come back, we'll find out how Ann got into the business in the first place and who and what influenced her through the years. Let's step out with another of her produced works. This is the song called Red from the Jordan Wilson Coalition. Stay tuned. This is Roots Music Rambler.
I once held you while you in a blood moon overhead. The planes shook the bed frame and replaced the sky.
Back on Roots Music Rambler with producer Ann Gauthier. She produced that track from Parker Hobson. It's called The Student Drivers of America. And we talked a lot about producing in the last segment, but you didn't start out in the music business as a producer. Take us through the path from being a kid loving music to actually making a career out of it. How'd you get here?
Yeah, so I started, I guess I started playing drums when I was 15, kind of classic hobby as a little music teen. And then, I just started playing in bands and I loved it. I would just like practice drums every day after coming home from school. I would definitely like obsessive a little bit, but it was super fun. So I played in bands, throughout my 20s. And I always like had, like, I think maybe when I was early 20s, someone gave me like a 4-track tape machine. So I would kind of do little demos for my bands. I kind of slowly kind of got into it and I really enjoyed it, but I never really pictured doing it until like maybe like late 20s, where I remember this one year I made 2 records with this producer in Montreal called Jay Slasek, who's an awesome guy. He owns a place called Break Glass Studio, which is a little bit like LaLaLand, actually. Not completely different. And then when I did that, like I was already a touring drummer. I was like doing Canadian tours, US tours, like kind of full on going for it. And then when I made those 2 records, I was like, oh, actually, like that's kind of maybe my favorite part of being a musician, So that kind of like opened my perked my ears up, I guess. And then and I also thought, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have so much like time at home, like I wouldn't have to be touring, but really I'm like here like 60 to 70 hours a week. So
Yeah, it never
that didn't pan out like the same way I thought. But yeah, and it's just like I think then I just started kind of like buying gear slowly. I had like a cool space in Montreal that I was renting that was like a art / practice space / little studio. It was kind of perfectly set up to be a studio. It had like the sliding door, so I just moved my gear there and started making like records for friends. And yeah, I just kind of like got the bug for sure.
Very nice. Now you mentioned being in Montreal, and this may sound like a dumb question, but are there sensibilities or cultural influences that you bring to the table, being not just from Canada but even the French Canadian part of the country, and that maybe you don't see or we don't see in American producers? I can imagine some instruments and sounds and influences are different in a nuanced way, but have you ever been able to put a finger on something that's like clearly Quebecian or even more broadly Canadian that impacts your work other than being more polite and having better healthcare?
That's a great question. I guess like the last maybe 15, well, I was there for about 15 years, but there's like maybe like there's certain styles that got kind of big in Montreal. Was there like the kind of post-rock thing, like Godspeed You Black Emperor, like the very experimental thing. And I don't do a whole lot of that here because there's not a whole lot, but I think maybe sometimes I might bring some of that to the table. Yeah, I don't know. In terms of Quebec music, I'm not sure. Like, I do feel like weirdly like bluegrass and some of the traditional Quebec music is actually really not that different. You know, we got like, infamous fiddlers and all that jazz. We got the spoons. I've definitely put spoons on a couple of records. That's very Quebec,
That's cool.
Yeah. That might be my contribution from the Quebec land.
I didn't even think about this when I was asking that question, but we had Kaya Cater on the show probably
cool.
about a year ago. And
sweet.
she's from Montreal, lives in Montreal anyway, and plays the banjo.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, that's, hell, I grew up in Pikeville. I don't play the banjo, but I know the banjo well. So we have a lot more in common than I think that question inferred that we might not. So,
I'm curious how she started. Like, do you remember what made her start playing? Because there's not that many banjo players in Montreal.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, she's from maybe out in Calgary-ish.
Oh, okay, so
somewhere
in
the outskirts,
right.
And she sort of picked it up from family there, and then moved to Montreal for some type of schooling or some type of profession. I know she did spend some time with the mountain music program at Davis and Elkins down in West Virginia. So I know she'd kind of been around a bunch of different places. But I don't think she's from Montreal. I think she's from somewhere out in the flatlands.
Yeah, and there would be more of that over there. I think Quebec would be more like the fiddle and the like stomping and all that good jazz.
It's good stuff.
But yeah, she seems awesome. Actually, we were emailing last year when she was in town for the I think she played the Bourbon and Beyond.
Yeah,
she seems awesome. Yeah,
she's a sweet girl. We loved having her on the show, and I haven't been able to catch her live yet, but I'm trying. I'm going to figure it out at some point. So, just a quick technical aside, digital production's been around a long time now. I know some producers are religiously analog, others kind of mix the two together. I'm sure there's some level of digital that touches just about everything these days. My guess is you probably have a preference. What's your preferred method of production, and how are things like AI and such affecting your work, if at all?
I mean, I love analog. That's where it all starts to me. Like those tones, plugins are great and they're useful and they're quick for mixing, but there's really, it doesn't even touch like when you capture something with, we got a great console or like compressors or preamps and cool mics. I think to me, it's still not even close, so I try to grab as much as I can through that. And then that always ends up in the computer just because how we talked about the budgets are not as big anymore. So editing through the computer to me has been a good kind of mixing the two kind of techniques together. I love tape machines, but also I keep buying them and selling them because there's almost no one that works on them anymore. So I wish I was a little more into repairing analog gear because I hate it. I hate it so much, but I wish I was into it. I could keep a bunch of tape machines, but I think like, yeah, just going through what we have here. I love tape, but I don't completely miss it because I can still get some of that cool analog juice or whatever through what we have here. But yeah, I like using both. I mean, if we had months to make our records, it might be fun to just do it on tape, and not everyone is, experienced enough as a musician to be able to work that way. Someone that might need a lot of like punch ins and takes and stuff, it might get a little more complicated to do that all analog.
I well, maybe not surprisingly enough to you or other people, but for the people out there listening, when we talk about analog editing, I learned how to analog edit back at a radio station doing radio commercials. So we would have the reel-to-reel machines, but I think everybody knows what those are. But then you'd have to look at the tape head where it actually played the tape, and you would get the tape to where you wanted to cut, and you would take a white grease pencil, and you would mark the tape, and then you would take a real razor blade and cut the tape. Yeah. And then you had this other like masking tape that was specially formatted for audio tape, and you would tape the other two tape segments together. And you talk about editing a 30-second commercial would take 2 hours. Yeah. So you don't want to do that.
Yeah. But someone once told me that if you were really good at cutting tape, you could edit as quickly as on the computer, which I'm like, I want to believe it, but that seems impossible.
I'm skeptical. Now, I will say that I saw some pretty damn good analog engineers back in the day who could do some pretty magical things, but the speed with which digital allows you to work is very, very different. So.
Yeah, it is very different. But yeah, I actually skipped, so I just started using tape machine, and we already had the computer. So I don't know. I feel like luckily maybe I skipped the step of editing tape. I don't know. Maybe I would have loved it, but it seems a little intensive.
I would say it is. I believe me, I love the digital stuff now. It makes my life a lot easier. So
and then I forgot AI. Well, so also I'm not sure like that some of the like what is AI in the audio, or like actually I was talking with a friend, like stuff that is on the plugin that you don't need to go through the internet, come back. I don't know if that's AI, so I don't know. Like I use a lot of like isotope plugins, but those would be within my computer, so I'm not even sure that's considered AI.
Yeah, I don't know that's AI. That's more of an audio effect. But like I know for this show, I'll admit this, when I get done with it, I'm not a professional audio engineer like you are. So when I get done with the voice tracks for our podcast, I run it through an Adobe AI enhancement software. And basically I upload the MP3 file or whatever it is to Adobe. And Adobe will, within a matter of seconds say, okay, we've optimized your audio. And it essentially masters it for me. It balances the audio levels of the voices talking. It takes out background noise. It makes everything nice and smooth and crisp. And it's got a couple of dials where I can like adjust. Oh, that's too much. It's kind of overdone. So back it off a little bit. And so I can make sure that it sounds when I play it. And all of this editing happens with automatic like AI filters. I don't have to twist any knobs. So that's where AI comes into audio for me. I would imagine eventually there's going to be some pretty deluxe, digital softwares that have it built in for studios that make things faster or easier, but I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like for cleaning out sounds, I think that's really useful. Like, if I do a podcast sometimes, or if I get a mix from somewhere that recorded at home and I need to clean it up, I think it's really useful. Even there's one that's like the de-popper. It's like it takes out all the pops. So it's like you would have had to go through every bit and like zoom in and find the like bloop and like try to cut it. The first audiobook I did a couple of years ago, I think I was too cheap to get the isotope thing, and I had to do it by hand. And I was like, oh my God. So that's useful to me. Like anything that's like AI creative, to me, it's like beyond the point. I mean, like I think as humans, like art is the one thing that we don't mess up, it's like why, like, I had a friend, like, he was like, oh yeah, I was trying this like AI thing to write songs. And I was like, oh yeah, how is it? He's like, yeah, I spent like 2 hours. I was like, oh, how many songs you got? He's like, 200. I was like, what? And it's like, well, what's, like, I think he was just trying it out, out of curiosity. It's like, well, what's the point of that? What does that, how does that make you feel? Do you feel accomplished that you did, and obviously that wasn't his goal, right. But it's like someone that would use that. It's like, oh, do you feel accomplished that you made like 200 songs in 2 hours? So to me, like, using it for, on the Slint record, actually, like, we were missing one of the 16 track on the tape machine, because they got stuff from the original tapes digitally transferred. So some of it wasn't very important. Usually you'll put stuff that's not as important on the edges of the tape. And I think it was a little bit of like some vocal, not even main vocals, some stuff here and there. So I actually used just a thing on the webpage that would split the track. So I split the original and like saved some of the vocals. It wasn't perfect, but it's, it didn't need to be, it's just like we distorted it. And it, so to me, like, using that, or for you, like, if you're like, well, I don't want to edit like a full hour of talking audio, I think that's useful for that.
Sure. So you mentioned earlier that your musical snobbery disappeared a while back, and you kind of take in a lot more artists and sounds and influences and whatnot, so that you've got more to pull from as a producer.
Yeah.
I wonder when you're not in the studio, which is not very often and not very many hours a day, so you're probably sleeping. But when you're not in the studio, what are you listening to these days? What excites you about the music that's out there?
I actually don't listen to a lot of music.
Oh, really?
I love silence when I get home, because I'm listening to all kinds of things like every day at the studio, which is great. So yeah, I don't, and I don't want to blast my ears anymore. So I might not do like, even if I'm listening in the car, I'll be pretty quiet. So I think nowadays, if I listen to like full records, it would be maybe a little bit chiller. And it's not that I don't like super heavy stuff, because I record it here all the time and love it. It's just for my ears. I'm just trying to, that's my tool. So got very little sensitive ears, so I need to be kind of mindful. But yeah, it would be like chiller stuff, like, I'd say like Big Thief. That would be some of the newer stuff, like that kind of more creative, I don't know, what are they, creative folk music, I don't know, creative experimental folk, some of that, and obviously, like, because of what I do, like, it would have to be like, I love this full record, and I also think this full record sounds amazing. To me, like, the two are really linked. That would like, and a couple of their records are in that vein too. So yeah, maybe a little bit chiller, but sometimes I'll just put some of the old louder classics. But yeah, I don't listen to a whole lot of music when I'm not making music.
Yeah, that's fair. I worked in the sports industry for about 15 years ago, and I would kind of come home, and my then wife would say, "You want to turn a ball game on?" I'm like, "That's the last thing."
You're like, no, yeah, not right now.
I'll watch Gilmore Girls. I don't want to watch the damn ball game. I'm done with ball games for a while. So that's fun.
Not related, but I read an article once about the science of recording baseball games. Have you ever, I mean, I'm sure you were around it. Like, it was just like one of the audio engineers, I don't know which team or something, but it was like, yeah, like, use this kind of mic to get the right crack of the bat. And I was like, wow, maybe one day I could get into that. And like, get so nerdy about like some random sport, and like, you hear the like ball, whoosh, it's like whatever mics you use and all that. So it's kind of fun to apply that to, all kinds of
man, those professional radio and or television broadcasts that have the shotgun mics on the batter's box, and they've got crowd mic setups that you can hear the crowd milling about and the organ playing. It's a cool thing to mix, for sure.
It is a cool, and the crack. Experience. I mean, it's true. The crack of the bat sounds great. I could see now that they've really thought about it heavily.
Yeah, it's good stuff. One of my old bosses, when I worked in radio back in the day in the 1990s, one of my bosses, the guy that hired me in New York, was a guy named Shelby Whitfield, who started the Associated Press Sports Bureau and then ABC Radio Sports. And he was one of the original play-by-play guys for the Washington Senators. And so
Okay.
he was one of those guys who created those early audio experiences. And so I never really sat down and talked to him too deeply about the kind of the audio engineering of things, but he was one of the sort of forefathers of that style of, hey, let's bring the experience to life audibly so people can hear at home and think they're in the ballpark. So I had a little brush with that at one point when I was really
That's
young.
cool. And I'm sure that changed too from like, I don't know, even like hockey games when it was just on the radio. It's like, what, I mean, I guess you could kind of hear stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit, something going on. So they were probably putting some, I don't know, RCA ribbon mics everywhere. Who knows what they were.
I would imagine with a hockey game, you got to be a little bit more sensitive about the crowd yelling stuff, but you know, the hockey games I've been to, it's not PG.
Right, yeah, but I mean, like I've listened to like old hockey games, like pre TV, and it's you kind of hear muddy stuff under the guy being like, you know, like that's kind of like the sound they had.
Exactly. So I want to touch on something else here a little bit. My daughter Katie actually attended one of your audio production camps at LaLaLand this summer, which I love the fact that you do that. That's fantastic. She learned a ton, came away very excited about her career path, much more well-informed. That was well worth it for us. But from the perspective of a record producer, what do you say to someone like Katie, who's an aspiring artist, who maybe wants to get a demo or eventually get a record deal and be recorded and such? What do you tell them to do to get those touch points, to get to those touch points one day?
To kind of be able to like maybe get in the industry and such. I think, you know what? I think it's very general. Just like work hard, be kind to people. You know, like your reputation is really important as well nowadays. Like just more like human side things. Like, I mean, you might not be the best songwriter, musician, or you might not be the best audio engineer yet, or you might have one or the three, or depending on what you want to do, like you will grow. But I think like who you are as a person will make a big difference, and like be, you know, even like when I take on interns, like the best interns are not the ones that know stuff, you know, they're the ones that are good people person. That's like huge, you know. And obviously I think Katie is also interested in music business, right? Yep. So I think that's probably huge as well, to be like a good human and to be a hard worker, and all those kind of classics. I think they make a big difference.
Very good. Well, I will certainly pass that on if she doesn't listen to the show. Which if she doesn't listen to the show, I'm going to ground her. But whatever. I feel like we could keep going and ask you questions for hours, but we should probably let you go. Before we go, though, tell folks where they can find you and LaLaLand Sound on the interwebs.
All right. So LaLaLand, we got a webpage, LaLaLandSound.com, and then we're also on Instagram. I think it's LaLaLand the place. I also have a portfolio online, and I'm also on Instagram. You could probably just, web search my name. I was going to tell the company name, but I thought, web search my name.
Yeah.
I've got some samples on my webpage and all that good jazz.
Well, we'll make it easier for folks. We'll put all those links in our show notes at rootsmusicrambler.com. The link to this episode specifically will be rootsmusic.link/Ann Gauthier. And thank you so much for coming to hang with us. We love what you do. Can't wait to see what's coming down the pipeline for you and LaLaLand. Really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Back on Roots Music Rambler, great talk there with Ann Gauthier. I've always been fascinated by record producers, and I mentioned obviously in the conversation with her, we talked a little bit about Rick Rubin. I'm kind of obsessed with Rick Rubin, especially since he just produced Snipe Hunter by Tyler Childers, and he previously worked with one of my other favorite artists, Marcus King, on Mood Swings, and I'm just fascinated with Rick Rubin. I read his book, on creativity, which is fantastic. And I've seen a couple of documentaries with him in it, interviewing other people. And I just find him really interesting. And not to take anything away from Ann and focus it on Rick Rubin, but I just think the world of producing records is fascinating. So it was really fun to get some insights from her. And I think, as we mentioned in the conversation, she did the little summer camp there that Katie went to for a week, and Katie, walked away from it with all sorts of more knowledge. And so Ann is just fantastic. Great to have her on the show. Fun conversation.
Yep.
All right, folks, it's time for our Pickin the Grinnin segment. This is the point in the show where Frank and I tell you our picks for who's making us grin. It might be a song, it might be an artist, it might be an album, it might be a documentary or a TV show, it might be, something we sat on at lunch. Who knows what it's going to be, but we're going to say this is making us grin. It's our way of recommending music in general to you. And so, Frank, I'm going to go with you first this time. Who is your Pickin the Grinnin this week?
All right. My pick is an artist that I recently saw live for the first time. And I was very happy to do so because I've been listening to this artist for quite a while. And that is none other than Shakey Graves. So that's not his real name, but Shakey Graves is from Austin, Texas. And I first came across his music. It has to be at least a decade, like on a Pandora station or something. The song Dearly Departed, which I think if anyone knows Shakey Graves, they all know that song. Like that was the big one, right? And it's a very unique song. Especially when I first heard it more than 10 years ago, it was sonically different, right, than anything else that I'd really been interested in. So it caught my attention, and it's just like a really, I don't know, to me, it's like moving. So he played recently at the Out of Space Festival in Skokie, Illinois, and along with your girl, Joy Aladakun, and Shovels and Rope. Nice. And that was just such a great show. It was so enjoyable, and it was outdoors. The weather was cooperative. It wasn't, like rainforest hot or anything like that. But yeah, Shakey Graves put on a great show and very entertaining. He's talented. His wife sings with him. She's talented as well. And he played Dearly Departed, of course, and a bunch of others that I wasn't familiar with, admittedly, but still very enjoyable. He kind of has a Ryan Bingham vibe going, like that gravelly voice. Mm-hmm. And the show was not long after the death of Ozzy Osbourne. So they covered a Black Sabbath song. And, everybody just went a little crazy over that. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I would definitely go see him again.
Shakey Graves. I like it a lot. Love the name. And I'm going to have to dig in to listen to some of those tunes. Good recommendation. I appreciate that. All right. So mine,
all right, what you got?
I got a good one. Actually, this recommendation comes by way of your husband. So your Tom texts me.
I thought so.
He texts me every now and then and says, "Hey, have you heard this group, or have you seen this video, or have you whatever?" And so Tom every now and then will throw something at me because Tom listens to the show. Thank you, Tom, because nobody that's related to me fucking listens to the show. But anyway.
He's the only one in my circle that does, and he will tell everybody that he's my biggest fan.
Yeah.
So of course, he's going to do what he has to, or what he wants. Anyway, go.
It's fine. So Tom likes to participate, and I enjoy it because he sends me stuff to look at, and the stuff he sends me is always obscure, off the wall shit that I've never heard of, and so he sent me this a couple of weeks ago, and I immediately started streaming their stuff, and I'm now like fascinated with the Zamrock band Witch. Witch is WITCH, just like you think it is. And they are a Zambian rock band formed in the 70s. They were active for about 10, 12 years, and then they kind of broke up, disappeared for a while. But they regrouped in 2011, and they're still touring. They're touring in America right now. Witch is actually an acronym which stands for We Intend to Cause Havoc. And they do. I'm just fascinated by these guys, and It's obviously rock music. It leans a little harder than other music, but it's got that interesting cultural, undertow of it's from people from Zambia, people from Africa. It's got tribal rhythms and phrasing and sonic, sounds in it that make you think of the jungle in Africa and, looking at lions and cheetahs and shit on the, it's just really, I find it amazing. It's music that takes you to a different place. And that's why I'm so fascinated with it, because I can put that on, put my beats on, get my little, my phone out of whatever Spotify on my phone and I give them my beats. I go sit in my backyard and I start looking over my shoulder to say, is there fucking elephants around here? What's going on? I don't understand what's happening. Takes me to a different place. I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. Witch, Zamrock, look it up. It's fantastic. There you go.
Wait, I'm looking at our notes for the show and I saw your pick and I'm like, why do I feel like he knows about this band? Because of Tom.
I do.
And lo and behold,
I do.
and he's probably texting you about this stuff now because he's tired of me not responding when he sends me this stuff. So thank you, Jason. You're such a pal.
Well, somebody's got to do it. He throws me. I will say this in your defense, I suppose. Tom throws me some stuff that I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to touch that. That's no way. But that's okay. I enjoy it. I enjoy the diversity of music wherever it comes from.
For sure.
And so Witch is definitely a new band that I've got them on a playlist on the Spotify's, and I like to crank that shit up and roll down my windows in traffic so people look at me like, what the fuck is this white guy doing? I don't understand.
Why is this white guy listening to Zamrock?
What is happening? So that's my. I'm a little bit like our favorite comedian Tom Segura. I really get a kick out of making everyone around me a little uncomfortable, and so that's a good way to do it. Turn Witch up in traffic, roll down your windows. Yeah, you get some stares. It's good shit. Roots Music Rambler is a production of Falls and Partners, copyright 2025. Our theme music is Sheepskin and Beeswax by Gentacorum. Join us online at rootsmusicrambler.com and make sure you mash that subscribe or follow button so you remember to join us for the next Hoe-Down and Throwdown. She's Frank.
And he's Falls.
And whatever you do, kids, ramble on.